You're listening to the Love Over Addiction podcast. Hey, how are you? So today we're going to be talking about a very interesting topic. We're going to be talking about psychopaths. Now, you might be going, Michelle, what does psychopaths have to do with loving someone suffering from addiction? And I'm here to tell you a lot for some of you. Okay, so if you've listened to the podcast before, you know I always say over and over and over again, you and I, we love someone suffering from addiction who is a good person, right? I call my ex-husband a good guy who happens to struggle with addiction. But not all people struggling with addiction are good. And some of them start off as good and actually end up becoming very hurtful, not so good people. And some of them we thought were good, but then when we learn their tricks and just how much we've been manipulated and how much we've been lied to or how much we've been cheated on, our eyes kind of become fully open and the scales are removed. We see who we fell in love with, we thought was good, but actually was just a psychopath. So if you are sitting there going, no, my spouse, my boyfriend, my lover, whatever, is good. I don't need this. Just hang tight. Let me go over a list of qualities and traits that make up a psychopath, and you can see for yourself. Judge for yourself. Just keep an open mind. That's all I ever ask. Hopefully, you're just married or involved with somebody who's a good human being, a decent person who just happens to struggle with addiction. And there's lots of them out there. But this also could be one of those episodes where I'm going to go through the list, and then in the next couple weeks, you're going to really observe your loved one's behavior or words, and you're going to go, holy cow, I think there's some of that going on here. This is more than just addiction. And for some of you out there, you just know your gut, your intuition, your intelligence is saying, yeah, I don't think I'm in love with a good person. And so remember, none of us in this community do judgment ever. Most of all, me. I absolutely can validate and raise my hand and say, I had no idea who I was married to. I thought I was in love with one person, but they were living a whole secret life. Most of our marriage, from the time I had my first baby, that I didn't know about. And I'm a smart person, so how could I have been fooled? You know, I read more self-help books than anyone else I know. I went to college for psychology. How could I have not seen this? But love is blind sometimes, right? So let me be your friend and your greatest cheerleader and help you see the truth. Okay? Are you ready? So right now I'm going to go into a list. Now, where am I getting my information from? Let's cite this. Okay. I'm getting my information. This checklist comes from a gentleman by the name of Jackson McKenzie. He wrote a book. I highly encourage you to check it out. It's called Psychopath Free. Interesting title. And he created this list that I'm going to share with you called Spotting Toxic People. And it's 30 red flags. Now, I'm not going to read the whole 30 because A, that's a long time to ask for your attention. And I know you guys are busy. And also because I'm not entirely sure that all of them really apply to loving someone struggling with addiction. So if you want to read the whole 30, you can Google it. But let me just go over some things, some of the the red flags that I think might pertain to you. Are you ready? Okay, so number 1, gaslighting and crazy making. Now, I know a lot of you, we sent out a survey and asked you, what did you want me to talk about on the podcast and in our community? Thank you so much for taking a survey. And let me just hold on one second and just say really quickly, because I keep forgetting to tell you guys, thank you so much for your positive reviews about the podcast. I read them, and just this last week, Brittany, who is our CEO, sent out a group text with one of the reviews that someone recently wrote, just to help remind us that what we're doing and our work is making a difference. I read another review, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and just started crying like a baby at my computer because it was so moving. I'm really, really grateful that you are finding this helpful. I love doing this for you. And I'm so grateful that you're taking the time to do that, because I know it's a pain in the butt to write it. It's not easy to write a review. And I know some of you are worried about your anonymity. I can never pronounce that word. But you can come up with a fake name. So anyways, just a side note to just say I am very, very grateful. Also, okay, let's go back, but I promise I'm going to go back to get to the point, Michelle, get to the point. Okay, so I don't even remember what I was going with this, because I'm 43 and I lose my train of thought all the time. So let's go back to the list, all right? Oh, gaslighting, that's what I was talking about. Thank you. So I apologize. Gaslighting, I am going to do an episode or two going into what gaslighting is. It's a buzzword. I'm also going to do an episode or two on narcissism. So I hear you. Thank you for taking the survey. I hear you, and I'm listening and I'm working on it. But I like to put out episodes that are very well researched. So I'm researching them right now. All right, so let's go back to this list. Number 1, gaslighting and crazy making. Okay, they blatantly deny their own manipulative behavior and ignore evidence when confronted with it. They become dismissive and critical if you attempt to disprove their fabrications with facts. Instead of them actually addressing their inappropriate behavior, somehow it always becomes your fault for being, quote, sensitive or, quote, crazy. Toxic people condition you to believe that the problem isn't the abuse itself, but instead your reactions to their abuse. Okay, next. Another red flag that you are in love with a toxic person. The ultimate hypocrite. Do as I say, not as I do. They have extremely high expectations for fidelity, respect, and adoration. After the idealization phase, they will give none of this back to you. They will cheat, lie, criticize, and manipulate. But you are expected to remain perfect. Otherwise, you will promptly be replaced and deemed unstable. Right? How many times do we talk about this in the secret Facebook group saying, I feel like I'm going crazy. I feel like I'm going crazy. Right? But we're not. We're actually not going crazy. Next, red flag. Pathological lying and excuses. There is always an excuse for everything, even things that don't require excusing. They make up lies faster than you can question them. They constantly blame others. It's never their fault. They spend more time rationalizing their behavior than improving it. Oh my gosh, right? Even when caught in a lie, they express no remorse or embarrassment. Oftentimes, it almost seems as if they wanted you to catch them. Okay, next, red flag that you are involved with someone in a toxic relationship. Forces on your focuses on your mistakes and ignores their own. If they're 2 hours late, don't forget that you were once 5 minutes late on your first date. If you point out their inappropriate behavior, they will always be quick to turn the conversation back to you. You might begin to adopt perfectionist qualities, very aware that any mistake can and will be used against you. All right, next red flag. You find yourself explaining the basic elements of human respect to a full-grown man or woman. Normal people understand fundamental concepts like honesty and kindness. Psychopaths often appear to be childlike and innocent, but don't let this mask fool you. No adult needs to be told how he or she is making other people feel, right? Next red flag. You find yourself playing detective. It never happened in any other relationship, but suddenly you're investigating the person you once trusted unconditionally. If they're active on Facebook or Instagram, you start scrolling back years on their posts and albums. Does any of those social media do we call it albums? I don't know. I'm so not in social media. I didn't know that. Okay, same with their ex. You're seeking answers to a feeling you can't quite explain. Right? You guys, remember we talk about this. I'm going to read that again. You're seeking answers to a feeling you can't quite explain. Remember when we ask them, have you been drinking? Have you been using drugs? And everything inside of our body is saying, yes, they have been. And they look at us and say, no, and they get upset with us or they blame it on us. But there's something inside of us, that feeling that we can't quite explain. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we understand this. Okay, next red flag. You are the only one who sees their true colors. No matter what they do, they always seem to have a fan club cheering for them. The psychopath uses these people for money, resources, and attention. But the fan club won't notice because this person strategically distracts them with this shallow praise. Psychopaths are able to maintain superficial friendships far longer than relationships. Next red flag. You fear that any fight could be your last. Normal couples argue to resolve issues, but psychopaths make it clear that negative conversations will jeopardize the relationship, especially ones regarding their behavior. Any of your attempts to improve communication will typically result in the silent treatment. You apologize and forgive quickly. Otherwise, you know they'll lose interest in you. How many times have you and I apologized for things that we don't think are truly our fault because we cannot get our point across or we don't feel like we're being heard? Next red flag. Slowly and steadily erodes your boundaries. They criticize you with a condescending, joking sort of attitude. They smirk when you try to express yourself. Teasing becomes the primary mode of communication in your relationship. They subtly belittle your intelligence and abilities. If you point this out, they call you sensitive or crazy. You might begin to feel resentful and upset, but you learn to push away those feelings in favor of maintaining the peace. And I know this is true, especially for those of you with kids in the house. You don't want to upset your children. Your mama bear attitude or papa bear attitude doesn't want to upset your children. So you're willing to do whatever it takes, take unnecessary blame, lie to yourself, pretend that it's really not that bad, or even blame yourself because you want to maintain the peace, right? Yeah, I used to do that too. Okay, next red flag. They expect you to read their mind. If they stop communicating with you for several days, it's your fault for not knowing about the plans they never told you about. There will always be an excuse that makes them out to be the victim to go along with this. They make important decisions about the relationship, and they inform everyone except you. Next red flag. You feel on edge around this person, but you still want them to like you. You find yourself writing off most of their questionable behavior as an accident or insensitive because you're in constant competition with others for their attention and praise. They don't seem to care when you leave their side. They can just as easily move on to the next source of energy. Now, for you and I, that source of energy usually is drugs or alcohol. And we're in constant competition with others. I would say we're in constant competition with drugs and alcohol for their attention and their praise. I mean, our biggest enemy or our biggest competitor in our relationships is with whatever they're addicted to, right? Okay, next red flag. Idealization, love bombing, and flattery. When you first meet, things move extremely fast. They tell you how much they have in common with you, how perfect you are for them. Like a chameleon, they mirror your hopes, dreams, and insecurities in order to form an immediate bond of trust and excitement. They constantly initiate communication and seem to be fascinated with you on every level. If you have a social media page, they might plaster it with songs or compliments or poems or inside jokes. Next red flag. The qualities they once claimed to admire about you suddenly become glaring faults. At first, they appeal to your deepest vanities and vulnerabilities, observing and mimicking exactly what they think you want to hear. This is really important, guys. This red flag and the last red flag, I think, are mega. Okay, so I'm going to read it one more time. At first, they appeal to your deepest vanities and vulnerabilities, observing and mimicking exactly what they think you want to hear. But after you're hooked, they start to use these things against you. You spend more and more time trying to prove yourself worthy and to the very same person who once said you were perfect. Oh my Lord. Okay, please forgive me. I'm going to read that last sentence one more time. Guys, seriously, you spend more and more time trying to prove yourself worthy to the very same person who once said you were perfect. Ugh, yes, YES. Okay, next. Cracks in their mask. There are fleeting moments when the charming, cute, innocent persona is replaced by something else entirely. You see a side to them that never came out during the ideation phase. And it's a side that's cold, inconsiderate, and manipulative. You start to notice that their personality just doesn't add up. That the person you fell in love with doesn't actually seem to exist. Remember we talk about this. This is about falling in love with their potential. And then as we get in more and more invested in this relationship and we go further and further along, their potential seems to go further down the drain. And then we occasionally only see glimpses of the person that they can become. Well, what if that's not their potential, guys? What if that's just, okay, they're getting lazier and lazier because they don't have to keep up the facade of this fantasy person that you fell in love with because they have you hooked. And then when they actually think that you're ready to go away because you're sick of the drugs and alcohol, they bring that person back. And you think, oh, see, I'm not crazy. They're actually a good person. It's just if they got sober, they would be that person consistently. Okay, next red flag. Covert abuse. From an early age, most of us were taught to identify physical mistreatment and blatant verbal insults. But with psychopaths, the abuse is not so obvious. You likely won't even understand that you were in an abusive relationship until long after it's over. Through personalized idealization and subtle devalue, you guys, I'm sorry, my mouth is getting tired. Let me try it again. Through personalized idealization and subtle devaluation, a psychopath can effectively erode the identity of any chosen target. From an outsider's perspective, you will appear to have lost it, while the psychopath calmly walks away completely unscathed. How many times have we been left crying, upset, screaming, because we're coming unglued and going crazy because of their addiction, and they just walk out the door and go hang out with their friends and don't even bother calling, right? Okay, next red flag. Pity plays and sympathy stories. Their bad behavior always has sob story roots. They claim to behave this way because of an abusive ex, an abusive parent, or an abusive cat. They say that all they ever wanted is some peace and quiet. They say they hate drama, and yet there's more drama surrounding them than anyone else you've ever known. Next, the mean and sweet cycle. Sometimes they shower you with attention, sometimes they ignore you, sometimes they criticize you. They treat you differently in public than they do behind closed doors. They could be talking about marriage one day and breaking up the next. You never know where you stand with them. As my morning coffee friend Rita wrote, they put forth as little effort as possible and then step it up when you try to disengage. Next, this person becomes your entire life. You're spending more and more of your time with them and their friends and less time with your own support network. How many of us, I'm just stopping right here, how many of us can raise our hand and say, yeah, we've lost some of our friends, or we're not in contact with our families anymore like we used to? Okay, back to reading. They're all you think and talk about anymore. You isolate yourself in order to make sure you're available for them. You cancel plans and eagerly wait by the phone for their next communication. For some reason, the relationship seems to involve a lot of sacrifices on your end, but very few on theirs. You guys, I remember I lost a job, a very good job, where I was climbing up the ladder because I was too busy trying to help him get better. My new full-time job became helping him. Next, your feelings. Your natural love and compassion has transformed into an overwhelming panic and anxiety. You apologize and cry more than you ever have in your life. You barely sleep. You wake up every morning feeling anxious and unhinged. You have no idea what happened to your old, relaxed, fun, easygoing self. After a run-in with a psychopath, you feel insane, exhausted, drained, shocked, and empty. You tear apart your entire life, spending money, ending friendships, and searching for some sort of reason behind it all. You guys, that's the final red flag. Listen, I don't know about you, but when I read this, I had huge ahas. Not only because I was like, oh my gosh, this so applies to my first marriage, but also because when I looked back before my first marriage and went through all of my relationships with men before I got married, I would say most of them, if maybe not all of them, were some variation of this. He talks about in the book about empathetic, compassionate, perfectionist, highly ambitious people having a target on their back for psychopaths. And I think there's a possibility that you and I are walking around with targets on our backs. And we might have had various relationships throughout our entire lives with psychopaths. Think back to your relationship with your family. You might even have a relationship with a parent or a sibling or an aunt or an uncle who is a psychopath. You might have been groomed for this type of relationship most of your life without even knowing that this is the common denominator with all of your relationships. So, awareness is really key to our healing. And we need to have the courage to be honest with ourselves about what's truly going on. It's very, very scary, this list, because you might be on a drive right now and you might be pulling into your driveway later on and going, oh my gosh, I might be involved with the person that has these characteristics and traits. And if you are, chances are they're not going to change. There's too many deep-rooted issues that make them who they are to change in anytime soon. And it's going to require honesty on their part, that they're dealing with this, that they struggle with this. They're going to actually have to look at themselves in the mirror and say, yeah, I actually might be a narcissist or a psychopath or whatever, and then seek out treatment. If your loved one is suffering from addiction, it's going to be really hard for them to go, not only do I struggle with addiction, but I also struggle with this. Now, I'm not saying it can't happen, but are you willing to wait around and see if it all pans out? Are you willing to sit there in this relationship? And if so, for how long? How long are you going to give them to change? How long are you going to give them to wait to take ownership and responsibility for the state of your relationship, for the abuse that they've been giving you? Because if you can relate to any one of those things, that's not a healthy relationship. You should not have to explain how to treat people to a grown adult. You should not be called crazy. I'm remarried to a wonderful man. Never, not once, ever, ever, ever has he ever come close to calling me a name, whether it's a 4-letter word or crazy or dramatic, anything even close has never come out of his mouth. Does it mean that we don't argue? Of course we do. We've got too many kids not to argue. Hello. But does it mean that we sit there and he belittles me or berates me or makes me feel like it's my problem or gaslights me and convinces me it's my fault? Absolutely not. The difference between fighting with my ex-husband and fighting with my current husband is night and day. When I argue or fight with my current husband, I'm not worried he's leaving me. I'm not worried he's going to replace me. I'm not concerned about him grabbing his keys and going to a bar with his buddies and watching a game. No, he's going to be parked right there on the couch till we figure it out, even if it takes a long time. There's safety. I feel safe. And I promise you, this is not me sitting here bragging. I don't have anything together. You should not be envious of my life. I'm just sitting here saying that when I compare, it is like comparing an apple to a coconut. It's just completely a different thing. And you listening, yes, you deserve the healthy relationship. That's the whole point of this. The whole point my intention of sharing this is not to create huge anxiety in you. It's to let you know you are actually normal, that you are the sober, steady one, that you are the responsible one, that you are the kind one, that you are the one who's busting their butts trying to make life work and life better, that you actually can leave this relationship and if you do the appropriate work, can find something and someone that's absolutely loving and honoring of you. And truthfully, you do have some work to do, as I did. I had work to do, but it's not that much and it's not that hard. The main work that you need to do if you were to ever leave your relationship is truly to heal from the damage that the psychopaths have caused you so that you don't fall into another psychopathic relationship. That you can find someone and recognize someone that will honor you, because people like us do have targets on our back. And it doesn't mean that we need to ultimately change our compassion and loving and codependent nature. In fact, not that I want to get into it too much because that's a whole nother podcast, but there is another wonderful book. I don't recommend you reading it yet. It's called Attached. And it's scientifically based about adult attachment. And in this book, they say that codependency is a myth, that actually attaching yourself to someone safe and loving and healthy is a great thing and necessary to grow and heal as a human being. But it is absolutely detrimental, the book literally says this, to be codependent with someone struggling with addiction. Because you are attaching yourself to someone who has no self-worth and whose job it is to make sure you don't have self-worth either. They want to bring you down so you feel as crappy as they do in their life. And obviously, that does not pertain to all addicts and alcoholics, but it does to quite a few of them. So, it's okay for you to keep your codependency behaviors and place them on another human being who is healthy. That's good. That's healing. That's wonderful. There's science behind that says that actually makes a very happy, healthy marriage. But it is not okay to continue that. You will constantly be asking for pain and suffering to do that with somebody who struggles with addiction. Does that make sense? All right. I know this was a heavy podcast. I know there's a lot of information I just threw at you. And I know that it's not very positive or helpful. I mean, I guess it's helpful, but it's not incredibly positive. But here's the truth. The truth of the matter is that it's not, your life isn't over. No matter how old you are, we've had women in our community who've taken the program that are 70 years old and said, you know what, I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life, no matter how long or short it is, to living my best life. That's the reality. Your life isn't over. You still have a lot of years ahead of you. So let's make those the best years. Let's dream up a new future and a new beginning. And maybe it's without the person that you're with right now. All right. That's it for today. Listen, you might want to listen to this a couple times. Also, if you want to read it, because I know a lot of you like to read, we transcribe every one of these podcasts. It's completely free. Just go to our website, loveoveraddiction.com. You can print it out and you can highlight and you can make notes if you're sort of type A like me, and you can keep it somewhere safe so you can refer back to it if you want to. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Take care. This podcast is created for your support, encouragement, and entertainment with my personal thoughts and beliefs. We are bonded together by the fact that we love someone suffering from addiction. This is not intended as a substitute for therapy or advice from a professional.